To be back with all of you. I want to thank Ilya for her tour de force this morning. There you are. I've heard the universe story presented by many people over the last decades, and that was an especially passionate and enlivening presentation. And it certainly was the funniest, most humorous presentation I've heard. So thank you for all that. Is this working? Is picking up? Okay, good. Just a few things left over from yesterday. I did a little research, and I was right. It's hard to believe you can fit 1 million Earths into the sun. 1 million Earths into the sun. That's a lot of Earths. That's a real big star. So I think it's important to understand when you're talking about more stars than grains of sand on our beaches, that this universe is something else. And we are the first generation to know how vast it truly is. That's no small thing. Speaking of stars, one of my friends over the years was Eddie Kneebone. He's an Aboriginal in Australia. He was an activist and a teacher, wonderful man. He's deceased now. But I was out with him once in Australia on a starry night. He said, "Look at the stars up there." He said, "We don't teach our children the stars are this many miles from Earth and all that. What we teach them is this, that the stars are the campfires of our ancestors. And our ancestors are up there looking down to Earth to see what's cooking on Earth. How are the campfires doing down here?" Now, to me, that is ancient wisdom. The Aboriginals are probably the oldest tribe on the planet, 55,000, 60,000 years old. And there's so much wisdom in that notice how they're personalizing the universe, personalizing the cosmos to their children. It's not just scientific facts, it's about relationship. And this is ancient teaching. The Lakota people, when they pray, their most sacred phrase, repeated all the time, Ahomatakiasi, all our relations, all our relations. So today we have contemporary science talking about how important relationship is. But ancient peoples who built their consciousness, their celebrations, their rituals around the goings-on of the cosmos, the seasons and the rest, they were very clear that it is about all our relations. It's not about all our institutions or all our power trips. It is about all our relations. Just a small story about Teilhard de Chardin that many may not know. You know, when he died, I think 5 people went to his funeral. And 10 years later, my friend, Sister Jose Habde, Franciscan, and a Seneca woman, was teaching in the Jesuit seminary there in upstate New York, which is now a chef's school, but at that time it was a Jesuit seminary. 10 years after he died, and she said to the class of Jesuit seminarians, "Tomorrow is the feast day of Teilhard de Chardin's death, so let's go visit his grave." And the seminarian said, "Who is Teilhard de Chardin?" 10 years after he had died, his own Jesuit brothers hadn't even heard of him. Well, they were dragged by the net to his grave, and they heard about him in no uncertain terms. Leo said so much that was rich this afternoon that I thought I would kick off to respond to a few of the points that she made. Obviously not all of them, because I have my own duties here. One is, she alluded a couple of times to Thomas Merton, and what isn't real well known, and she quoted from one of his last books on Zen and the Bird of Appetite, which is really a whole book on Eckhart and Zen. But it was in 1958, and she referred to his early years. He joined the monastery in 1940. 1958, 18 years later, he had a conversion experience. And the conversion experience was precipitated by Dr. Suzuki, the Japanese Buddhist who brought Zen to America, who told him that, Tom, you've got to read the one Zen thinker of the West, Meister Eckhart. Well, at first, Merton said, well, Eckhart's been condemned by the church. Suzuki said, I can't help that, can I? And Merton spent 1958 reading Eckhart, and he flipped. He really flipped 180 degrees. I've been to the center of where he is, and he was giving teachings the year before, 2 years before, to the novices saying, history of spirituality, and he'd stop at Eckhart and say, oh, be careful of him, he's real dangerous, he's real dangerous. Then he'd move on. That was his sum total of Eckhart until 1958, thanks to a Buddhist who brought Eckhart to his attention. And in 58, Merton flipped from being a guilt-ridden, Augustinian-tainted monk to being a liberated, prophetic Christian human being. And the next 10 years of his life was all about his prophetic writings, his taking on the Vietnam War, the Guilty Bystander book, and many books on Zen, on Sufism, on ecumenism. He was clearly one of the real pioneers in ecumenism, which is what drew him to take his last journey. And as I pointed out in my book, I knew that he was martyred in Bangkok, but now it's been proven by a team. They just came out with a book this year called The Martyrdom of Thomas Merton. He was murdered by our government, and we should remember that for a lot of reasons. That he died as a peace activist because he came out against the Vietnam War even before his friend Dr. King did. And there's just so many stories around Merton that are so powerful. And he is one of our great gifts in North America, a gift to the world. So I just wanted to make that connection between Merton and Eckhart. And the passage that Elia shared us about the spark of the soul. Well, Eckhart is always talking about the spark of the soul. And what's amazing is in 13 different sermons, Eckhart talks about the spark of the soul and credits Avicenna. Avicenna, the Muslim philosopher who lived 200 years before Eckhart. Now that is so unusual that a medieval monk, well, not monk, a Dominican friar, would give a Muslim philosopher credit for a theological term that was right at the heart of his theology, the spark of the soul. And then, so Eckhart is really amazing, and he not only converted Merton, people don't know that Martin Buber did his doctorate on Meister Eckhart. And not entirely on Eckhart, it was on 3 mystics, but one of them was Meister Eckhart. So his influence had been vast. Ernst Bloch says he had a big influence on Karl Marx and so forth. So, but Eckhart is just beginning to come into his own, I think, in Christian circles. And it's certainly overdue. As long as I'm on Eckhart, I want to throw out a little advertisement, and I'm doing this very exciting conference in June for 5 days in Erfurt, in the monastery, the priory where Eckhart lived for many years, where he taught, where he preached, where he prayed and meditated. And it's going to be really exciting. The place was never affected by all the wars in the last 700 years. So it's going to be an experience of morphic resonance in the space of an amazing guy. This is my one bucket list thing, is to teach Eckhart where Eckhart taught. So you're invited. There's a flyer here. They have out there too. We'll be following my pedagogy. By that I mean I'll be teaching in seminar in the morning, but the afternoon will be art as meditation. So you'll have a choice. There will be dance, putting Eckhart's concepts into the body, movement with Eckhart, taught by a sun dancer and a fellow who also makes his living teaching dance and movement. Or there will be a course by a Jungian analyst in dream work and journaling. because I think people are going to have amazing dreams in that space, that morphic resonance where Eckhart lived and did his dangerous thing. So you're all welcome. It's in June in Erfurt, Germany. So pick up a flyer about it or tell some crazy friend of yours. I liked one of the points Ilya made about many people see God as a formula or something else. There's a great line in Eckhart where he says, many people look on God as they do a cow for the milk and cheese they can get from God. The milk and cheese from the cow. What can we milk from? What can we get from God? I really like that. And this is where his Buddhism comes forward when he says we should love without a Y, W-H-Y, work without a Y, and that's very Buddhist. But Eckhart is very, very Buddhist, but he never read Buddhism or met a Buddhist in his life. He came to the same truths of Buddhism by his own meditation as a deep Christian. And that's what's so powerful. And it's also a great compliment to Buddhism, that they have discovered deep universal truths about human consciousness that others have found also by not going that exact path. But what a thing it would be for the two traditions to really link up at this time. And Ilya mentioned resurrection. One of my favorite teachings, I'll be quick on this, about resurrection is from my brother Thomas Aquinas, who says there are two resurrections. They're not seen this in any other Christian theologian. There are two resurrections. The first is waking up in this lifetime. And if you've done that well, you don't have to worry about the second. It's a powerful teaching. It takes us away from that whole hankering after heaven, hell, whatever you're expecting, into putting things in the now, as is very, very close to Ilya's teaching. Now, Ilya quotes David Bohm a lot, and I'm glad she does. I love David Bohm myself. And he once said that I owe more to Nicholas of Cusa than I do to Albert Einstein, which is a shocking statement from a late 20th century physicist. But who is Nicholas of Cusa? He was another Rhineland mystic. Coos, the town of Coos, is very near Bingen, where Hildegard hung out. And he was profoundly influenced by Eckhart. We found the transcripts to Eckhart's trial in the 19th century in Cusa's library. Cusa lived in the 15th century. But he was one of the launchers of the Renaissance, really. He was the mathematician and other things. He was also, as my mentor, Père Chenou, used to say, a cardinal in the Roman Catholic Church, but that is not necessarily a good reference, he said. That's what he would say. But one thing that made Coos different was that he was a minority. He was in Greece, as a nuncio, if you will, to Greece. So he had to learn some humility, just like Pope John the 23rd was nuncio to Turkey, in a Muslim country. So he learned a little humility. It's very hard for cardinals to learn humility, as you surely know. And so Coos was an amazing, but primarily he was this amazing mathematician, but a real mystic. And but again, he's very direct influenced by Meister Eckhart. And David Bohm says, we're talking about what is matter. I love his definition. It turns me on. He says matter is frozen light. Frozen light. And some physicists would say, well, very slow moving light, whatever. Frozen light. What I love about that, it destroys dualism. It kills Plato and Neoplatonism and Augustinian dualism entirely. Because matter is light and light is light. And here we go. And in the book I did on world religions, One River, Many Wells, where I have 18 themes that are found in all the world religions, the number one dominant synonym for divinity around the world is light. In the Celtic tradition, the African tradition, Buddha talks about be a light unto yourself. And of course, the Christ, it talks about I am the light of the world, etc. It's absolutely universal. So what science is saying melts a dualism that spirit and matter are one thing. They're different. One may be slower moving or even frozen, but light is light. And furthermore, we now know that for every molecule of light in the universe that is matter, there are 1 billion molecules of light that are not matter. And so matter is not the problem. Matter, or another word for matter is flesh. Flesh is special. It's 1 in 1 billion to have your body. Beat your body. Thank God for your body. Thank the universe for your body. You know, we hear about cosmology. Cosmology is not something just out there and up there and something we hear from scientists in white coats. Cosmology is your body. Your body is carrying these 13.7 billion years of history within it. 60% of your hydrogen atoms were cooked in the original fireball. So if you have a bad day, if you feel tired, you know, it's those hydrogen atoms saying, I've been around a long time, give me a nap. And the other 40% of your atoms were cooked and birthed in supernova explosions, 5 billion years ago or so. So that's who we are. That's how amazing our bodies are and how thankful we need to be just to be here, just to be here.